Please welcome back TechCrunch Managing Editor, Matt Burns.
That's my boss. He's really happy for me. Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Burns. Thank you for joining us for the second session of Startup Battlefield. Earlier today, we saw a lot of really interesting startups that are developing technology in deep tech sectors, and today we're going to see even more. Let's recap a few things, though. TechCrunch had 3,200 companies apply for this Startup Battlefield class. We selected 200 of them, and you can see all of them downstairs. But out of the 200, we selected 20 to pitch on this stage. And over the next 2 days, or today and tomorrow, they're going to pitch on this stage. We have 5 companies in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. So let's get started on this second round. I'm going to bring out the judges real quick. I'm going to read their impressive bios, and then we'll bring the first company. So judges, come on out. You can clap for them. They're cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's Henry. He's really nice. Okay, first we have Morgan Beller. Morgan is a general partner at NFX and is co-founder of Libra and head of strategy for Novi, Facebook's digital wallet for the Libra payment system. She originally joined Facebook as part of the corporate development team in 2017, where she worked on defining Facebook's strategy around blockchain, cryptocurrency, and decentralized technology. Prior to Facebook, Morgan ran corporate development at Medium. Next, we have Mark Bhargava. Mark is the managing director at General Catalyst and part of their fintech crypto investment team. Mark focuses on early stage investing across both crypto and fintech, as well as building out the creative strategy. Additionally, he contributes to GC's expanding AI efforts. Prior to joining GC, Mark spent years as a founder-operator with an emphasis on new fintech, AI, and crypto technology. As an angel investor, Mark worked closely with founders on sales, distribution, and fundraising. Next, Preeta Chokshi. Preeta is at Norwest Venture Partners and brings more than 20 years of corporate and business development experience to her role as a partner on Norwest Consumer Internet team. Prior to Norwest, Preeti spent 9 years at Facebook in executive roles in corporate development and business development. Before her time at Facebook, Preeti spent 6 years at Google in strategic partnership roles. Earlier in her career, she earned her startup chops and strategy and management roles at 2 fast growth companies, one which was acquired in 2001, and the other one went public in 1997. Next is Healy Cipher, Chief Operating Officer at Atomic. As COO, Healy oversees the daily operations of the 11-year-old venture studio to support founders and foster an inclusive culture where team members thrive. Driven by his entrepreneurial vision and Atomic's model of building companies in parallel, Healy co-founded BoomPop at Atomic in 2020, where he also serves as CEO and helps Fortune 500 companies create the next generation of workplace culture. And last but not least is Tess Hatch, partner at Bessemer Venture Partners. Tess is a vice president at Bessemer, fostering entrepreneurship of frontier technology, specifically the commercialization of space, drones, autonomous vehicles, and the future of agriculture and food technology. She wants to invest in technologies and people who believe as strongly as she does that frontier technology would develop solutions for societal problems. That is a lot. You guys do a lot of things. Thank you so much. All right. Well, with that said, let's bring out the first company. From Durham, North Carolina, we have Avalo. Presenting Brendan Collins and Mariano Alvarez. Come on out, guys.
I'm Brendan Collins, the co-founder and CEO of Avalo, where we use AI to make more climate-resilient crops.
I'm repping for her. If we're going to sustain humanity over the next 25 years, we're going to need to increase our agricultural output by 60%. That's 60% more food, more clothes, and more medicine. And at the same time, we're expecting a massive uptick in the number of climate-related crop failures. Hi, everybody. My name is Mariano Alvarez. I'm an evolutionary biologist and the Chief Science Officer at Avalo, where we're on a mission to accelerate the creation of new and productive crop varieties. So if you want to create a new crop variety, you have to start by understanding the genetic basis of the trait that you're trying to improve. Scientists normally start with methods like the genome-wide association study that you see up on the screen right now. If you're working on a simple trait like disease resistance or pest resistance, it might involve only one or two of these genes. But if you're working on something complex like time to harvest or drought resistance, it might involve thousands of these genes, which makes this process way more complicated. The genome-wide association studies are our current state of the art, but only about 14% of the things that they return are actually useful. And sometimes it's as low as 1%. And after you're done finding your target genes, it's at least 5 years and up to $100 million to produce even a simple genetically modified variety. Or you could run a traditional plant breeding program, which could take a decade or more. We have an urgent and unmet need to deliver new and resilient crop varieties to farmers, which is why we're seeing substantial investments and great economic outcomes for other companies in this space that are offering even incremental solutions. But until we figure out how to reduce the bottleneck in the discovery and the development process, we're just not going to meet the needs of billions of people in time. At Avalo, we drew our inspiration from natural selection, which, although it's incredibly slow, is actually really efficient in creating new varieties of crops that are able to survive in different conditions. Our core technology was based on some of my research at Duke University, where I fit statistical models to that long history of natural experimentation. In a collaboration with Squirrel Award-winning professor Cynthia Rudin, we realized that we could use techniques from interpretable machine learning to open up what would have otherwise been black box models. The result is a new discovery method that, instead of the 14% accuracy of GWAS, allows us to identify causal gene targets with 90% precision. We then used that knowledge to build an AI-enabled recommendation system that suggests which plant crosses might produce the traits that we're looking for. And it does that with only 1/100th of the data that's normally required. This level of accuracy and efficiency allows us to forecast plant outcomes before they even happen. And that lets us increase the process of discovery and development by up to 77%. So I know I'm making some big claims here on stage, so let me walk you through a series of experiments that we did to try to optimize the complex trait of time to harvest in Chinese broccoli. Time to harvest, by the way, is really tightly correlated with yield and with seasonality, so it's actually a really important trait for farmers. So we started by planting 300 different varieties of broccoli in our greenhouse in North Carolina. We then sequenced each and every one of their genomes, which resulted in like 2 terabytes of data. We then ingested all of that data into our discovery platform, and that set the stage for our recommendation system. Can we go to the demo? So in this recommendation system, our software allows us to simulate all of the possible crosses. So we select the experiment, and then we wait a second while the simulations load, and then we'll see all of our possible crosses on the screen. On the left-hand side, on the y-axis, is the time to harvest, or the time to maturity, and on the x-axis is bud size. And on the right-hand side, you can see all of the possible crosses that we could make. We could then sort that list and see which ones have the shortest time to harvest. We actually did that. We took the top 3 here, and then we made those crosses in real life. And then we planted them out in our greenhouse in North Carolina. The broccoli that you see here was actually our winner. It had the shortest time to harvest, from 45 days when we started to just 37 days when we were done. This allowed us to validate our process in just 1 breeding cycle, just using genes that already exist in nature.
Beautiful broccoli.
Thank you. Because we're able to achieve this new level of cost and time efficiency, we can actually work on any crop in the world. So even crops that were too complicated or too costly to work on are now economically feasible for us. And as a result, we're working with a number of pilot partners to get our technology into their existing breeding pipelines so that they can reap the time and cost advantages. But the real goal of our company is to make new seeds. And we're currently doing that with partners like Farmed Materials to create an alternative source of rubber, and with our own R&D pipeline to create sustainable sunflowers for cooking oil and drought-resistant cotton with better fiber quality. We're really lucky to be joined on this process by plant breeders, biologists, computational specialists, not just from top-tier academic institutions, but also from huge strategic agricultural companies, all of whom really believe in our mission to change the way that we grow crops. You know, when my best friend and I started this company a couple of years ago, we asked each other why we wanted to do this, why we wanted to start a company in agriculture. The answer for us is that there's no job we'd rather do, no problem we'd rather tackle, and no impact we'd rather have than this. If you believe that a more sustainable and resilient world is still possible, I urge you to send an email to one of the addresses on the screen and join us in planting the seeds for a greener tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Can you guys take a step over a little bit over there and get in the
right.
light? Yeah, and I got to know
yeah.
before we start, where in Michigan are you from? I'm from right here.
Okay, so my in-laws are from right here, which
Oh,
is,
that's a good,
it's beautiful.
yeah, good beer down there.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Go
Yeah.
blue.
That's
Yeah.
right. Preeti, you want to start with you?
Sure. I was curious on what are your sources for data as you go from customer to customer?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when we work with partners, sometimes they have their own data sets, and that's great. That can plug into our existing pipelines. But what we realized is that most of the data is either not high enough quality to train our models or is locked behind big private companies. So we've actually gotten really good at generating our own data. We can do just 1 or 2 really efficient experiments in the field and then gather the data that we need to train our models. So we actually now have greenhouses and field sites and a lab, and we can do all of it in-house.
So when you say you can do 1 to 2 experiments, in the example that you used with the broccoli, you had 300 varietals.
Yes.
Would that count as 1 experiment or 300?
That is 1 experiment
Okay.
with 300 plants. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Tess?
Great presentation. Loved the show and tell and the decision on,
Oh, yeah,
on
thank
broccoli. Beautiful broccoli. Stealing your joke. Help me understand the relationship you're going to have with farmers. Right now, are they your customers, but eventually you're going to vertically integrate and compete with them, and how they feel about that?
That's a really good question. So they are our customers. So at the end of the day, farmers, when they buy a bag of seeds, they're paying for our product and from the R&D that we're able to put into that product. So our goal is to actually just create the intellectual property of the seed. Then we can work with distribution partners or other large agricultural companies to actually get them propagated and distributed so that farmers can actually plant them in our fields. But farmers' needs are obviously really important because they're the ones that are paying us at the end of the day.
And what are they using right now if they're not buying your seeds?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's other seed companies usually divvied up by different crops. And the larger companies are Bayer and Corteva and BASF, so big chemical companies. And then there are sometimes smaller integrated producers. So sometimes tomato companies will have both the processing plant and the seeds themselves. So it's kind of a complicated landscape, but we think that by starting with the seed, we can actually address a lot of different customers, regardless of how their resulting pipelines look.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Keely?
Hey, awesome presentation. I love this, by the way.
Thank you.
So I'm thinking of the Monsanto business model where they own the seed IP, and then basically if the crop produces seeds, like, sorry, that's not your seed, friend. That's still mine. And you resell them year after year.
Yep.
How does your business model compare contrast? And can you be a Monsanto killer, or do you sell to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there's a lot of people working in this space that are offering different types of solutions, and we're a small company, so we want to make allies and not competitors. But I will say that there's a few different ways to protect the intellectual property of the seed, and a few different ways to get it out into the world. In our case, we're the types of seeds that we're producing are what are called hybrids, and so farmers can buy them year after year. They could save them, although their performance will go down over time. So farmers are actually incentivized directly to continue to buy new seeds, but if they don't, that's okay.
Why does performance go down?
Performance goes down because the way that the genomes are composed, they're sorry, this is a little bit in the weeds, but they're
Pun intended.
Pun intended.
the alleles are heterozygous. So when the plant is crossing with each other, it can often result in a new outcome that is not what we intended in our lab. That's okay, but probably performance will go down if you continue to save your seeds year after year. And it's only by this sort of controlled process of bringing plants together that we can create the highest performance.
Got it.
Go to Mark and then Morgan.
Sure. How did you guys come up with the name Avalo? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I'll take that. So my mom's family is from India and from the Himalayas, and so we took the first part of the name from a Buddhist saint that is sort of popular in that region.
Gotcha. And then as a follow-up, what sort of AI technology do you use, and do you leverage OpenAI or Anthropic or Google? What's the background to what you're building?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we, all of our AI, in particular the stuff that we developed is proprietary to us. Our real secret sauce is the interpretability of the models, and so we can wrap any existing AI model in our methodology that allows us to open it up. So it's nice for us because there's a lot of people that are doing really amazing work in the AI space. We can just use their models and implement them in our system, but our ability to open them up is what allows this discovery and prediction process to proceed more efficiently. So we're sort of a layer on top, actually.
Gotcha.
I also love what you guys are up to. I love that you, like, the physical demo worked and the software demo worked, and like that's not something we did. And the uniform of like this vintage.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
it's
Tracy.
so I also had the M word written down for Monsanto, but my novice question is, yeah, like I'm hearing your pitch. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like there's a lot of people we need to eat. It's all going in the wrong direction. Like directionally, that all makes sense. But all of the big companies that you're speaking of and Monsanto like have to be thinking about this also. So just like help me understand, what part are you doing that like they're not doing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. So
Quickly,
usually in this space, like corn is king. And so all the other breeding programs only get the dredges of what is going into the corn program. So by not focusing on corn specifically, but going on that kind of tier right after of soy, other like million-acre, broad
Yeah.
acreage crops, there's huge opportunities to access those areas specifically.
I would buy the anti-big corn thesis. So I'm in on that alone.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Give them a round of applause.
Great.
Grab your broccoli. Oh. Okay. Next company from Los Angeles, California. We have Beyond Aero. Presenting for Beyond Aero is Valentin Shamal. Come on out.
Aviation will be electric. Beyond Zero mission is to make it happen.
Hi everyone, I'm Valentin Chomel, one of the 3 co-founders of Beyond Aero. And today I wanted to talk about one of the major challenges of our generation, climate change. And as Beyond Aero, we focused on one part of climate change, aviation emissions. So as you all know, there's an urgent need to decarbonize aviation. At the Paris Agreement in France, where we're based, in 2015, the entire industry agreed to meet net zero emissions by 2050. But if you see the trend of today's aviation market, you get 3 gigatons CO2 equivalent per year in 2050. How to fill that gap in between? That's what we want to develop at Beyond Aero. So today, at Beyond Aero, we are convinced aviation will be electric. That's the solution to fill this gap. However, we need to start from the light aircraft. That's why today I'm very excited to introduce you one. One is our business jet, but fully electric thanks to hydrogen technology. So here is another view of the aircraft. And maybe you're asking, why hydrogen? So maybe you're considering also batteries or sustainable aviation fuel as an option to decarbonize aviation. Well, there's 2 factors. There's energy efficiency of the entire conversion, from green electricity to the flight, and there's the aircraft performance in terms of range, speed, and payload. So battery technology is good energy efficiency, as you see for cars, but it's not matching range or payload or speed for an aircraft. So this is not a good enough option for this aircraft. Sustainable aviation fuel is a recombination of hydrogen and carbon capture in the air to make a jet fuel. This has good aircraft performance. Actually, you can drop in existing aircraft, but you don't have the energy efficiency. The conversion process consumes too much energy. So on the long run, this is not a good enough solution. And hydrogen in the middle has good enough energy efficiency and a good enough aircraft performance. That's what we are choosing hydrogen at Beyond Aero to develop our first aircraft. Today, Beyond Aero demonstrated the most powerful powertrain in Europe. We will be live demoing this in a few seconds, but this is an 85 kilowatt powertrain from hydrogen tanks to a propeller. And we integrated into an aircraft that we are actually being ready for test flight. And now I propose you to move for live demo of a ground test of this aircraft. So thanks to the team in the middle of the night in France, in Toulouse, where we're based, this is our aircraft in live. So you can see here the hydrogen storage system at the rear of the aircraft, a fuel cell system as a passenger seat, power electronics, BNS avionics, and balance of plant, also system and air supply, plus the electrical engine that guides the propeller. There is a pilot in this aircraft, and we are ready for test flight. But now I propose that the team launch a ground test in live for you. So this is an hydrogen electric powered aircraft ready for test flight. So now I propose to move back to presentation, because after this prototype, subscale, this is the power of a car, we'll move to a real aircraft. And in the go-to-market of business aviation. Business aviation, there's a lot of aircrafts and a lot of emissions. That's why we propose comparable performance without the direct emissions. So it's an 6 to 8 passengers aircraft, pressurized, so you fly in altitude, with speed and range of existing aircraft. So you can match the existing missions. This is possible thanks to our scalable powertrain architecture. Basically, it's 3 times a hydrogen truck, but for an aircraft. So we supply H2 tanks, H2 fuel cell, air supply system, and some batteries, and 2 electric motors for this architecture. And then we build the aircraft around it. So around it, it means how to integrate the tanks below the cabin of an aircraft, and how to integrate thermal management system. Also, another important part of Beyond activity is to work with European airports for them to be ready for our jet. So 200 airports handle 80% of the traffic in Europe, and we're working with 50 of them to bring hydrogen for our aircraft. Today, we have 620 million of letter of intent, and a fourth of our investors are actually clients. So we start with business jet, but in the long run, aviation will be electric. So we'll scale this to regional and commercial platforms. At the end of the day, Beyond Aero has a possible CO2 reduction contribution possible of 350 megaton of CO2 equivalent. So thank you for your attention, and happy to talk and connect. If you want to join the team, join us as technical partner, or if maybe you want to buy a jet. Thank you very much.
One of my favorite things to do is watch the judge reactions. And Healy leaned forward and, wow. That was really good.
I'm a pilot, so I was like, this looks awesome.
Well, let's start with Tess.
Well, I want to ask you, can you fly that? Because I can't buy it, but I would love to take a ride. As a former aerospace engineer, and I like to think I still am an aerospace engineer, although this is my day job now, we are notorious for our 3-letter acronyms, our 3-letter regulatory bodies, whether it's the FAA here, although I think your team is in Toulouse, so ESA there.
ESA, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how we're approaching certification for an entirely new airframe propulsion system, and I'm sure you have extra fun sprinkles as well.
Yeah, so when we started the adventure, a few options were possible. How to decarbonize aviation? Maybe a big jet, maybe a regional aircraft, and we converged to business jet. And in this business jet, we've concluded that the only miracle to happen is certified hydrogen. Everything else in the aircraft is as conventional as possible. It means avionics are off the shelf. We work with airframe suppliers that work with Airbus or Boeing. It means electric engines, let's buy from aerospace suppliers. Whatever we can buy and assemble, we do. That's for, at the end of the day, we have a conventional aircraft, and it means we have a lot of guidelines we could work with as a company to certify it. And the extra work we put is to certify hydrogen. That's the approach.
Okay. All your pieces have good flight heritage. And then on your last slide, you had a certain amount of LOIs and commitment. Who are some of your customers? Who are some of those logos?
So we have two types. There's people flying private, maybe some of you if you want to discuss afterwards, or charters that buy tens or a dozen of aircraft to make available for a membership. So we have a lot of known people. I don't know if I can quote them here.
Don't do it.
Not sure.
Mostly downside.
But yeah, and maybe the striking fact is they invest in the company. We discuss with them for client interview, then they sign a letter of intent that, oh, I have the problem, and my friends also have it. And maybe I can basically pre-buy my aircraft if I invest soon enough in the company. That's how we work.
Healy, let's go to you.
Yeah, so super intrigued, of course. I had a technical question, which I'm going to ask Tess later. I guess as I think about this, it's kind of one of those holy grail opportunities where it's like it's a big bet, and it feels like it's going to require a lot of capital to get to a critical mass. I was just kind of jotting it down. It's like you have the certification process, which is going to take a while. Then you have to do the testing, which is going to take a while. Then production. Then you have the infrastructure on top of that. And then you do the kind of go-to-market flywheel. So how much capital do you need for all those, 80 airports to have hydrogen, and for you to have jets flying in and out to get this thing really moving?
Okay. So in terms of infrastructure, it's less of a problem than we thought initially. Meaning this aircraft is still a light aircraft. It's about 3 times a truck. So you can make it compatible with the hydrogen supply for trucks, hydrogen trucks. And in Europe, there's a lot of investment in the supply system and a lot of companies that are developing this supply network. And so we are linking airports and energy suppliers so they can just connect the closest station for a truck to the airport. And basically, since the aircraft is not too big, it consumes 150 kilograms of hydrogen per flight. A trailer truck for hydrogen that is existing today, there's a lot of them in the world, it could supply the airport for multiple days. One truck, multiple days, if we replace the entire market segment of these jets in these airports. So basically, the problem is for bigger platform, bigger aircraft later on. But today, it works quite well.
Got it.
On maybe one word on the company side to finance such development. Yes, it will be a few hundreds of millions, but at the end of the day, aviation will be electric.
Yep.
So we try to find the best approach to make it happen, and happy to work with whoever is willing to make it happen. It could be technical partners, it could be, it needs to happen.
I think they all brought their checkbooks.
Yeah, that's not a scary number. I mean, okay, so fast follow-up is, so I was thinking about, initially I was going to say, could you retrofit existing airplanes to work on the system? Then I was like, well, F it. I mean, how much lifespan does an airplane really have anyway? So when you think about the existing fleets out there you're targeting, how fast does the existing fleet degrade, and then what's your opportunity to refresh it?
Quickly, please.
Oh, sorry.
20,000 aircraft in this segment, and they have a lifespan of 20 years, so 1,000 a year.
Okay.
So there's 1,000 a year being sold right now in this market segment. So we'll replace as much as the production line are able to supply. Basically, that's how we see it.
Let's get one more question in from Preeti.
So in order to change the world, you also need to make it affordable. And I was curious what aspect of aviation you're actually changing. So you still have to pay for the pilot, you still have to pay for the gate fees, you're swapping out fuel for hydrogen. Can you talk a little bit about cost of maintenance and ownership?
Yeah. So our focus is that the overall aircraft is at the same price as you pay it today, but your maintenance cost and your fuel costs will be lower. On maintenance, it's already existing on trucks. For fuel, it's already comparable with jet fuel. And as soon as you add a carbon tax on any jet fuel, you are more competitive with hydrogen.
Is it 25% more competitive or
today
about the
is
same?
equivalent,
comparable?
And if you add a tax, as much as the tax, you get a decrease of the competitiveness for jet fuel.
I'm so sorry we're out of time. It's always a good sign, though, when you run out of time. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's bring out the next company, right? From Wilmington, Delaware, we have Knowledge. Presenting for Knowledge is Bodo Hunen and Vincent Favarat. Give them a round of applause and bring them on out.
Hi, I'm Bodo from Knowledge, turning the E in e-learning from electronic to extraordinary. Hi everyone, my name is Bodo, I'm from Knowledge, and we are the AI backend of EdTech. 200 billion is being spent on generating educational content every year. However, 98% of this content is both static and linear. Only 2% of it is dynamic. The reason for this is it takes such a lot of time and money to produce. But why is this a challenge we need to think about? It's no longer clear what problems our learners need to solve tomorrow, nor is it clear what jobs will be available or what we should train them for. And yet, our educational systems are forced to guess because it'll take them months, if not years, to develop courses. But what if we could generate courses in real time? And that's where Knowledge comes in. With Knowledge AI, we're able to generate interactive bite-sized e-education, e-learning packages, 100 times faster, plug-and-play ready for any learning environment. With Knowledge LX, we generate full learning experiences for any learning goal in near real time. Knowledge as a service is already being used by multiple platforms who can simply plug us in. We focus on being the behind-the-scenes AI-ready solutions provider, while our partners provide distribution through their platforms. We've worked carefully with the teams at Canvas, Google Classroom, Microsoft, and Ilias to launch the first few integrations right here on stage today, with further integrations being launched every few weeks until the end of the month and end of the year. This provides us a huge market opportunity. We already have 58,000 educators using Knowledge, who reach 3.8 million learners, and we signed just about 1 million in contracts over the last few months. Some key clients include the NAESP here in the US, the Parish School System, and top business schools in Europe. Based on current conversion data, we estimate 5 million in ARR by the end of 2024, with 1.5 million already soft committed. The team that is bringing this all together has had successful exits in AI companies and edtech products acquired by Google. And collectively, we bring in backgrounds in cognitive science, AI, pedagogy, and collective intelligence. Let's move to demo, please. Now, in this demo, we're going to show you how we can generate bite-sized educational content, which would usually take us about 40 hours to produce, but we're going to do this in just a few minutes. All we need to do is, to get started, is provide some source material. In this case, I'm going to provide a YouTube link. It then goes ahead and generates bite-sized educational content. Here we have an example. It's created an interactive video that includes pop-ups of all the key terms, as well as quiz questions. But we don't just end there. We also generate a glossary of all the terms with their definitions, some flashcards to help the learner study, a whole bank of quiz questions specifically designed to help the learner understand what's most important about whatever material we just uploaded. We also generate drag the word assessments, a summary of everything being taught, as well as a learner dashboard that describes what the learner has been doing. But we don't just stop there. We generate additional 12 interactives that include games like Find the Word and crosswords. But we also generate teacher materials to help the teacher design lessons based on this content. They can then customize this and then export it to whichever learning environment they use. And that's it. What used to take 40, 50 hours can now be done in just minutes. Let's go back 2 slides, please. Institutions are reporting that it's a 100x reduction in cost and time to produce this type of educational content. Educators are reporting a significant increase in completion and retention rates. And all of this combines to provide us really high NPS and product market fit scores. However, we take this a whole lot further with Knowledge LX, which is currently in early alpha. We connect learners with their desired learning goals, be it getting a job, completing a project, or obtaining a qualification. We do this by generating a latent space of all the concepts that lie between the learner's current understanding and their learning goal. Here, they interact with bite-sized educational content and learn from experts all around the world. Now, while we were working on this, something deeply personal happened. And I get emotional about this, but while we were working on this, we needed to test this out in the real world. My daughter suddenly gets really sick, and she loses the use of her arms. Her arms get paralyzed. So we needed to build a brain-controlled exoskeleton to help her move. But as you can imagine, there's no course for how to do this. So instead, we used KnowledgeLX to generate for us a whole learning experience. We learned how to 3D print. We learned about electronics. We learned about brain-machine interfaces and signal processing. And we learned from experts all around the world. What should have taken us several years to learn and build was completed in just 7 months. We built a brain-controlled exoskeleton that allows her to move now. This is the future of education we can provide to our learners, a future where we can tap into the learner's intrinsic motivation and generate real-life learning experiences in real time. We invite you to join us. We are currently recruiting top talent from around the world. You can reach us at knowledge.io, and we are also integrating with learning management systems all around the world. Thank you for your time.
That was wonderful. Okay, let's start with Mark this time.
Great. Thanks so much for that presentation. What sort of schools or companies do you think benefit most from this? Like, where's your starting point? It seems like there's so many different types of schools, companies, online networks that could benefit.
Yeah.
But where are you kind of starting? Where
We're
does this
starting off focused on K-12 and higher ed, mainly here in the US and the UK. This is because we are initially launching English. However, in 2 weeks, we are launching 5 additional languages. And then we're exploring expanding to LATAM and various other European nations. That's our core focus at the moment. However, we get a lot of interest from corporates. So we get about 50% of our inbound leads are corporates. So we are exploring that, even though we are currently focused on academic.
And given that focus, what's your distribution strategy? Like, how do you get in front of these folks? Who do you target?
Yeah, our distribution is primarily indirect. So we are partnering, like you saw on the slides, we partner with Canvas, Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, Ilias, with a number of additional partners or integrations in the pipeline. It's through their platforms. So their platforms have been designed many years ago, and they're very rigid, they're very linear, they're very old school. They can plug us in and now suddenly generate interactive educational content on the fly with pathways to any learning environment. So we are trying to upgrade the existing infrastructure, allowing us to use their existing distribution mechanisms.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Preeti?
First, thank you so much for sharing your deeply personal journey with your company. I was curious, how do you handle any underlying objections to the IP ownership as you point the system to specific URLs to generate the content? Does the teacher, in this case, have to have the rights to the content, or are they using Creative Commons, for example?
So we are approaching this very much like any authoring tool would. We require the user to understand what rights they have to their content. This is also part of the way that we are quite unique. We require the educator to be in the driver's seat. We also require the educator to provide us some source material. And I know this wasn't directly asked, but this is quite unique to us. That source material not only becomes what we generate content from, but it also becomes ground truth. We don't allow the AI to generate anything that's hallucinative because we use that as ground truth.
Morgan?
Thank you, as Preeti mentioned, for sharing the personal story. And I'm sorry you went through that, although what an incredible case study. That's wild. So I've seen a lot of like AI education things in the middle of that. And this is kind of like the everything everywhere all at once. Like you're doing worksheets and videos, and you can do K-12 and. So my first question was Mark's question about like, where are you starting? But more specifically, I'm curious, NFX stands for network effects. So I have to ask, like, what are the network effects to your go-to-market strategy? And then a side question that you can throw in there is, when you're integrating with these platforms, are you white labeling, or do you plan for Knowledge to be like a household name?
Okay, so the first, the network effects. We got several, well, we've got three main networks at play. One is the latent space that we generate, the latent space, the underlying latent space of everything you can learn. So there's definite network effects at play there. The network effects also come into account when we are tapping into educators around the world who would help in that learning process, because we recognize that content can only get you about 20% through the learning experience. The rest of the 80% is done through your interactions with learners and experts. And so that's what we did with my daughter and I. It was experts around the world that provided us most of what we learned. And then I forgot the last part of your question.
Oh, the white labeling, like when you're integrating with
yes.
these platforms. Yeah.
Maybe on this front again, the paying customer for us is the institution. It's school districts and countries, right? We leverage the learning management system as a powerful way to create volume deals and to reach 1.5 billion learners through their channels. That means that we really position ourselves as a vertical B2B AI as a service company. And this allows us not to fail by trying to sell directly to the teachers or directly to the learners who don't really have the power to buy, the buying power of that.
Tess?
I promise I'll be quick.
Please
You
do.
mentioned the 3 go-to-market customer profiles, K-12, institutions, countries, whatnot. Tell us a little bit about the business model. You said you'll end the year at $5 million of top line, the aggregation across those 3, and how we're pricing it for those.
Yes, so the business model is basically a yearly license from the institution. So on average, it's 10K per institution, right? And we bring a friction, so we work with product-led growth on the teacher base so that they adopt the technology and they use it as a free trial. But we bring friction so that they recommend the tool to the administrators. And there we cut the deal in a top-down approach with our BizDev team. But we automate the sales process to 75% ideally, so that when we push these large integrations, so either in deep integrations in white label or semi-deep integration in their marketplaces, then we have an influx of users from there, and that allows us to automate this lead generation, this deal closing at scale. So we have around 1,000 schools already with us for that. And our goal is to reach basically 10 million teachers and 1 billion learners until the end of the year. And we are well on our way to achieve that.
Great, thank you so much. Healy, I got to cut that off. So
All good.
give him a round of applause. Thank you so much, you all. Okay, what number are we on? 4. Here we are. From Arlington, Virginia, we have Phalanx. Presenting for this company is Ian Garrett, co-founder and CEO. Give him a round of applause and bring him on out.
Hey folks, I'm Ian Garrett, co-founder and CEO of Phalanx. We have cybersecurity that lets humans be human. How many files do you have on your computer? When's the last time that you access them? How many are PDFs? And where in the world are people accessing your data? A single piece of personal identifiable information, known as PII, can cost an organization $186 per record. A single file can contain thousands of records. And yet a security team has no easy way to answer any of the questions I ask, especially company-wide. Existing cyber solutions make humans responsible for security actions, when in reality, security actions often get in the way of getting a job done. The more secure systems will individually encrypt files, but there's a lot of overhead and it's burdensome. The more productive systems will open the aperture, encrypt larger areas, but when a user is actually using that data, it leaves it exposed. In the constant battle between security and productivity, why does it feel like we can't let humans be human? When it comes to deploying a traditional data loss prevention tool, 98% of organizations take more than a few weeks, with almost half of them taking 4 months to over a year. Can you imagine spending $1 million on a tool that you can't even use for the next year? Phalanx's mission focuses on the core problem that users have to make security decisions, and they pit that against productivity decisions when in reality, people are getting paid for productivity, not security. No one has ever gotten paid to not click a phishing link. We make this possible by focusing on the everyday actions users take with their documents, and then we overlay that into the existing environments that they're already in. This approach is key because it reduces the attack surface. If you have 1,000 files on your computer and you're only using one, then you expose that one while 999 files are secured by Phalanx. Those 999 unused secured files don't impact your productivity. However, it completely hinders the ability to steal that data. Phalanx is like turning your office into a bank vault where Phalanx is the key card, where employees can badge in and access the lockboxes that they're supposed to. Now, security isn't useful if it's not used, which means productivity, efficiency, and ease of deployment and management are key for security teams as they're deploying data loss prevention tools. Traditional data loss prevention is rules-based, which means there's a human being that sits behind a terminal, hand-jamming rules into the system. And if that process takes months, then there's months of potential human error being coded directly into those systems. In contrast, Phalanx is an identity-based solution that leverages automation, and that means we're deployable in less than a day and requires 0 weekly maintenance. Now, what does this actually look like? Please move the demo. The foundation of what Phalanx is built on is tying identity to individualized encrypted files. If the encrypted file is on a desktop, we make it easy for the end user to access that data, because again, we want humans to be human. They can double-click files, right-click files, everything that they're used to today. Now, encrypted files, automatic otherwise, very important and interesting, but what really moves the needle is what's next. You can't protect what you can't see. And Phalanx provides a digital map of every file across every existing workspace. CISOs can finally see who's accessing what, where, and how across their workspaces, no matter where they are in the world. If an employee has 50,000 files on their laptop that they haven't touched in 7 years, that's a massive security risk. So there's time to do something about that. If somebody's opening a file in a country that you don't have an office, you can restrict that from opening. And this wealth of data is not only accessible just on our dashboard, but it's portable via API to any kind of existing monitoring or analytics systems. Thanks. Now back to presentation. We've reduced the cyber risk exposure of our customers in the financial services and government contracting sectors by over 60%, with that number growing as we continue to roll out automations. We also have a dual-pronged go-to-market strategy where we focus on mid to large-scale enterprise by doing per-user requirements, so we're scalable with the needs of those security teams, and we can also deploy out to SMBs via the channel. So we have channel partners that represent tens of thousands of users under management that finally have an ability to deploy data loss prevention to their SMB clients. So not only are we securing their data, we're actually enabling their businesses. Our opportunity is exponentially growing as long as with our channel partners as businesses. The only way that we can continue to build the next generation in data loss prevention is with our design partners. So if you're a financial institution or an SMB that struggles with quantifying the cyber risk of your organization, solve that problem today at phalanx.io. Thank you.
Okay, Morgan, let's start with you.
Sure. Another demo that works. What a thrill. 4 for 4. I'm curious what you both were doing before this.
Yes. So both of us actually met at West Point for undergrad, and we both commissioned to the Army. I was a cyber officer. He was a logistician. Afterwards, I went into a PhD program focused in cyber and AI, so you can tell I like cyber. He went into an MBA, worked at Deloitte as a cyber risk consultant. We actually have a third co-founder as well, who's our CTO, who's pretty much spent the entire time building and leading teams building large-scale secure systems.
Great. I'm glad I asked.
Me too. Mark?
Yeah, I was curious if there's some new tech breakthrough that allows you to build this product, or if this is something you could have also built 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that's changed over time is the processing power on the edge. So let's say 15 years ago, doing encryption at the individual level can be processing heavy. However, in today's day and age, our mobile phones, our watches, definitely our laptops, all good to go on that standpoint.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Healy?
Sure, yeah. Great demo. Good job. 4 out of 4. Amazing. So
Lots of pressure for number 5.
I just want to make sure I totally get it. So does this require that every file on your computer is in the cloud primarily, then locally downloads as you need it?
Even better. So we encrypt in place to where it's at. So if it's on your desktop, we'll encrypt it on the desktop. If it's in Google Drive or OneDrive, we'll encrypt it in place there as well. So we want the data to stay resident to where it's at. We do the key distribution and management in our cloud, but all the data actually stays where it's at.
Got it. Okay, super. The fast follow-up question. I loved you kind of pointing out that it's productivity versus security. Everyone's paid by productivity. Really wise point. So does this hamper like load speed or anything like that? Like local performance, how does it change?
Yeah, so the biggest difference, I would say, in the microseconds, most users don't notice the impact to opening a PDF or a Word document. And again, because in today's day and age, with all the modern processing, the actual encryption doesn't actually slow down the machine very much. And the actual data that's required is minimal because it's just the key.
Got it. Great, thanks.
Tess?
Super impressive technology. If I were a CISO evaluating your product, whom might I also be evaluating as well? Tell me a little bit about the competitive landscape.
Yes, so there's two. So in the world of cybersecurity, which is super convoluted, we live in the data security realm. So we focus on securing data and specifically unstructured data. So everything that's outside of a database. So there's two main areas two main ways that you would secure that. So that one is with a data loss prevention solution. That's like a Netscope or a Proofpoint. That most of them focus on, again, kind of putting in rules where as data is moving around an organization, they say, oop, you can't go there, oop, you can't download that. The issue is it's trying to capture data loss as it's happening, so it's not really preventative. The other side is just encrypted storage. So that's something like a company called Prevail or even like a Box.com where they're trying to have an encrypted enclave where they have the data that's secured, but the issue there is there's not visibility across the entire workspace, so a lot of people deal with documents in other personal drives, desktops. There's a lot of areas where the systems don't have visibility.
Okay, and one of your slides said you're focused on SMB. Would you go up to mid-market and enterprise, and you're starting there and eventually going to expand in white glove, or that's the customer sweet spot?
Actually, so we do service both. So we do the mid-market and a large scale as a direct sales. And then we approach the SMB via our channel partners. Because we primarily sell to the CISO and security team, and we found that mid-size and large scale obviously have CISOs. SMBs often outsource it, so that's why we go through their trusted partners, which are the channel partners.
Thanks.
Of course.
Healy, another question?
I was going to ask distribution strategy, but you just answered it.
I read your mind.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question. So as you've gone to market, what have been the biggest surprises as far as like what customers want, what customers hate, what part of the pitch resonates?
Oh, 100%. So it's actually why we're even doing the way we're doing today. We started with more of an encrypted focus. We found that nobody actually is interested in buying security. There's been a couple one-offs like, oh, gee whiz, that's cool. But we found the visibility component and then that map that we're showing, that's a huge game changer. That's where they go, oh, wow, I didn't realize I had this, there, and that. And so that the data aspect of actually understanding and feeling comfortable with that has been the game changer for our customers.
Yeah, a lot of questions. Now let's go to Preeti.
What keeps other folks from copying your approach? What are your moats in the business?
Yes, so the biggest thing that we've done is go against rules-based towards identity-based. So our key distribution management system, and as well as we have a multiple encryptions per file, so we encrypt the file, encrypt the metadata associated with that. So that whole distribution system is IP for us.
And have you filed patents for it?
We haven't yet, but we are looking into which components to patent. Obviously, we don't want to give away the secret sauce.
Tess?
I'm going to put you on the spot, and that's just because we're running out of questions up here. I'm assuming customers that are on your platform, if you go down, they go down. How's your uptime been for your customers thus far?
Yeah, so far, I mean, we're built on AWS and also AWS GovCloud for our government contracting customers. So anytime there's, it's a data class called CUI for government data. So we host that on AWS GovCloud. We host everything else on commercial. And then we also have a redundancy system. Again, going into that security productivity, we don't want to be the reason why some other business fails. So we have a multiple redundancy system for both the keys and everything else.
100% uptime.
Yes.
Damn.
Nice.
Well, that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much. Give them a round of applause. Okay, we have one more company in this batch to start a battlefield, but we'll be back tomorrow with 2 more sessions, one first thing in the morning and the other one right after lunch. So I hope to see you back then. But before then, we're going to bring out from Toronto, Canada, Magnistar. Presenting from Magnistar, it's Jacqueline Good. Give her a round of applause.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Good. Outside of building amazing space spectrum simulation technology, you can find me sailing and training for space. Hello, thank you so much for having me today. My name is Jacqueline Good. I'm the founder and CEO of Magnistar. I'm here with my demo, Danny. Thank you so much. We are thrilled to be introducing Magnistar and the 24/7X platform. 24/7X conducts spectrum simulations and coordination infrastructure to bring relief to the space sector. Welcome to space. Many of the services that we rely on here on Earth, from Earth observation to financial systems to GPS navigation, as well as telecommunications, relies on space infrastructure. These are radio communications conducting signal communications between Earth and space. As we go from 8,000 satellites to over 100,000 satellites in space, the issue that we're facing is that it's becoming much noisier. It's the spectrum noise and the consistency of communication that Magnistar is addressing. When we dove into this problem, we understood that the current process that satellite operators are going through in order to obtain spectrum, coordinate spectrum, as well as protect their spectrum rights are quite outdated and using technology that's 25 years old for the legacy space industry rather than infrastructure for the modern space sector. This is immensely important because without clear communications, the entire space sector becomes in jeopardy. We need to establish clear communications on a regular basis, and Magnistar is tackling this challenge. We tackle this challenge through easing the complexities of space spectrum. We simulate how multiple satellites, when they will be in a collinear event and potentially interfere with one another from their signal communications in between Earth and space. We embed that simulation technology into coordination infrastructure in order to expedite the process of how satellite operators work together in the space ecosystem. When we were first building this, we connected with a satellite operator who told us they had just received their allocation of spectrum and received 70 letters from different operators saying that they were going to interfere. They then had to go to each one of these different operators and prove to them that they would not interfere with them, costing them millions of dollars in the process. Magnistar has understood this process, embedded it within the technology workflow that we have built to automate portions of that process, expediting how satellite operators coordinate, protecting their spectrum rights, and monitoring in near real time to ensure consistent communications between Earth and space. In doing so, you can think of us as your one-stop shop for all spectrum management. We build in a safety net for all satellite operators as well as for regulators to understand new spectrum filings coming out every 2 weeks from the International Telecommunications Union. We simulate how those new constellations, as well as how existing constellations, will interfere with one another. And we establish clear pathways of communications for existing satellite operators between Earth and space, between different operators together, as well as between the operator and the regulator. Let's move to demo. You can see here within the Magnistar platform, this is a software platform, where immediately I have notifications of what's occurring within the spectrum market today. I have all the new filings that have been released from the International Telecommunications Union over the last 2 weeks. The system has automatically run whether or not they will cause simulations or signal interference to my existing constellation. It has flagged 2 new filings that are needing my attention, and it also has flagged an existing coordination agreement I have in place where there's been a modification to that filing. This would typically be done by specific engineers and PhDs going through the filings, understanding, writing letters back and forth, running simulations that can take up to a week to run and 24 hours to get a result, which we have all embedded within one software application. Within our interference forecast, we have specifically here all the coordinations that an individual operator is currently working through. I can go ahead and run multiple simulations at a time, which is currently non-existent within the existing technology. And as I go to work a new interference calculation, I can put in my specific parameters. I can run if I want it to be an uplink interference assessment or a downlink interference assessment or an inter-satellite interference assessment. Again, doing this for both real time, as in I'm going to make a connection to my satellite in the next 10 minutes, what's my likelihood of being interfered with? Or for long-term coordination agreements, over the next 2 years, what is the likelihood that these two satellites or these two constellations will interfere with each other more than the thresholds put in place by the regulators or the International Telecommunications Union? I can go through and create this specific simulation forecast. In selecting specific forecasts, I can see either a pass or a fail. So as I go through to select, I select a given interference, and here I have a fail, meaning that it exceeds the given thresholds put in place by the regulators, and this would cause interference. Historically, when this has been done, it's the satellite operators noticing an outage or noticing an interference after it occurs, setting off a month worth of due diligence on why that occurred. In this case, we're requesting more information directly within this operator sandbox and completing the coordination. If we decide to complete, we send directly to the regulator, and it signals off and completes the workflow. Moving back to the presentation. In doing so, we have built a semi-autonomous enterprise signal system. This signal system, the reason why we have gained such traction with it, we have 11 geostationary operators, 14 non-geostationary operators, and 8 government organizations, military regulators, international bodies, who we achieved alignment with on our approach in developing this technology, receiving multiple letters of intent, multiple operators who have now pre-purchased and prepaid to get early access to this technology, and won a military contract. These are our differentiators on why we are unique for both internal and external use. Critically, we are building this to be a spectrum exchange. This spectrum exchange can only come to fruition as we have validated that it will not cause interference as we're subleasing spectrum, and the coordination agreements are still being adhered to. We are also building this directly within the community. I am a Canadian delegate of the International Telecommunications Union under the United Nations. We are moving forward for this to be the new standard for all satellite operators and regulators. More than happy to answer questions on how we make money and our team as well. With that, in signing this QR code, we are onboarding operators into our early adopter program over the next few weeks. We have 4 signed up already who have prepaid to be a part of this program. Get your operators on board.
That was good. Way to wrap it up. And if we can acknowledge, that was 5 out of 5 on demos, right?
That was amazing.
That was very good. Even a satellite company. Well, thank you very much. Okay, Tess, let's start with you.
Great job, Jacqueline. Nice to see you. And exciting progress.
Thank you.
You mentioned the ITU a few times. Sorry, I don't like to use acronyms.
International Telecommunications Union.
Thank you. Why aren't they doing this themselves? They're the ones given the world the various spectrum and has the most to lose when it interferes, let's say, with critical infrastructure like GPS. Why are they not building this?
Absolutely. So we have been in communication with the International Telecommunications Union as we are delegates under their membership. With that, the reason why is because they are so strapped for resources and so focused on just maintaining the regulations, allocating the spectrum already, that when it comes to them requesting coordination agreements to be completed, they are actively looking for new tools to conduct the simulations and automate portions of the coordination experience for all satellite operators and regulators around the world. So we are actually working with them in developing this technology to be the new standard for all operators and regulators to ensure clear pathways of communications moving forward.
Ooh, does this mean you could have a regulatory moat if they ubiquitously certify MagnaStar as the exchange, the spectrum exchange?
Absolutely. So the regulatory moat is what we are establishing and what we've been positioning ourselves with, both with the ITU,
Buzzword.
with the International Telecommunications Union, as well as multiple regulators around the world.
That made Healy smile.
Woo, I got goosebumps.
Let's talk about that. Let's go to him.
Oh, I was actually going to ask you about, are there any secondary benefits? So like, I know security is a big concern in space. When you're doing these encodings, is there like interception prevention? Are there kind of like secondary and tertiary benefits that come out of this?
Absolutely. So one of the benefits is identifying greenfield opportunities. So greenfield opportunities as in where is nobody else downlinking currently, where there's available space for you to be connecting and better utilizing your capacity. So that's one of them. The other one that we see being quite prevalent with our operators is market access. We're looking at codifying all the different regulations that go into entering different countries. A lot of folks try to enter countries without realizing the regulations that have been put in place in order to enter that country and operate in that country. And we're codifying those directly within the solution to make it simpler so that satellite operators can be more decisive on the markets that they enter next.
That's great.
Mark?
Yeah, I was going to let you speak a bit to the business model. So how do you make money?
Absolutely. So we've established a business model that has 3 different avenues of revenue today. One is our early adopter model. An early adopter, low barrier to entry, they pay a monthly fee, and then we charge per simulation. The second is our enterprise edition, so unlimited simulations, unlimited access. And the third is by taking a percentage of the spectrum leased.
Gotcha. And how large do you think that business could be 5 years from now? What would be a great number in terms of revenue?
Ooh. In the United States alone, there has been over $250 billion spent on spectrum allocations and spectrum auctions. We enable and are going after at least 10 to 15% of that market to be subleased within our ecosystem, if not 50%. We also see ourselves going in the terrestrial market, so we see this being within the multi-billion-dollar range.
Morgan?
I'm going to ask the same question. And Tess and I were on the space stage earlier, so thanks for making us feel at home. But what were you doing before this?
Before this, in terms of career-wise, I was managing and I was the director of all data infrastructure and strategy at a multi-billion-dollar pension fund. I had previously worked actually with 40 organizations across North America on their data infrastructure, including the company I used to work for that built in the majority of the stock exchange's back-end systems. So understanding how stock markets work and the real-time data processing that goes into those stock markets is my edge. And then similarly, I'm also a graduate of the International Space University within space engineering.
Preeti?
What is your go-to-market plan? So let's say, according to Tess and your grand plan, you become the standard for how this work is done. Are you going to work with the agencies to actually get pushed out to everyone who buys spectrum, or do you have other plans?
Yes, so we are already today, so because we're a part of the International Telecommunications Union, specifically the Working Party 4A, they're the ones that create all spectrum regulation and spectrum rules and recommendations. So we work within them, and within that, we're on site with basically all of our target customers every other month or so right now as we prepare for the World Radio Conference. So we have direct access to be on site with them. We've also been building this with them. So every step of the way, every quarter, we're updating them on our progress. All those operators that I mentioned previously, we've been updating them every step of the way, getting their buy-in, making sure that we're driving value for them. And so that as soon as we are opening up this early adopter program, which we just opened last week, we've already had 4 sign on to be a part of it, and we're going after the full market.
And you talked a little bit earlier on your business models. What do you expect the average contract value to be for your engagements?
At this point, we're unable to say that on stage. I'd be happy to say that that's an offline conversation, though, to go into the average value of the contracts.
We're all friends here. We'll keep it secret. Tess, let's go to you.
Got really busy. Is Shaq up next?
Yeah, big guy's coming out next.
That makes sense. Hello. What are the edge corner cases? You mentioned all types of downlink, uplink, intersatellite link. Any spectrum or anything that you either haven't onboarded yet or can't to your exchange?
We've tackled the specific spectrum starting with the KA. We've done it by band. So we started with KA and KU because they're most prevalent for communications and for real-time communications within telecommunications, backhaul system, internet. That's where a majority of high-capacity spectrum is used. So we've been going after that market first and instilling that within the product, running equivalent power flux density calculations, which is the recommended calculation as a part of working within the KA and KU band. We are then also moving into the lower frequency bands, which are used for Earth observation, as we've seen that being a large market as well, especially for the real-time instances of if I take an image of Earth and I need to downlink that image within the next 10 minutes for military or other purposes, I need to know if I have a clear path of communication or if I'm going to be interfered with. So that's how we're targeting the market today.
Well, thank you very much. We got to leave it there. Give them a round of applause. And again, thank you so much for coming out to Startup Battlefield. Disrupt's a huge show, but I know you guys are here for the startups. So please stick around. We have more startups coming up next, including a former basketball player right here who's going to be talking with a education startup. So give our judges a round of applause. Stay put, and we'll be right back.